have a governor that is committed to limiting access and pushing access out of reach for those of us who need it the most. Kemp has sent a clear message about whose lives are important and whose lives aren't important. And I must say, as a black woman living here in the state of Georgia, it doesn't feel like he thinks that my life is important.
I have one message for Governor Kemp. We will see you, sir, in court.
Yes.
And for those lawmakers who voted for HB 481, who voted against women by supporting this bill, you were nervous to take this vote, and you should have been nervous, because we are watching and we are coming for you and your seat. We're not waiting for 2020. We are starting that work now. We are going to make sure your constituents know how you voted and what women really mean to you, because this means that you don't trust women and you don't care about women's lives.
We are preparing with our local attorneys, with our national attorneys, with our coalition partners, a comprehensive challenge to the many ways that this bill is unconstitutional and violates the fundamental constitutional rights of women in this country.
It is a forced pregnancy bill. This is a forced restriction of health care bill. This is not just about abortion. This is restricting access to health care services, specifically for marginalized communities, specifically for black people, specifically for queer people, specifically for trans people and non-binary people here in Georgia.
Well, welcome to Christ in Culture. My name is Pastor Jeff Short, and today we're going to be looking at yet another controversy surrounding abortion, and we're going to be looking at some familiar names again. There is another case where actress Alyssa Milano is leading the charge against another pro-life bill that is before one of the states, and this time it's in Georgia, and the bill is basically simply this: that if a baby's heart can be detected by medical equipment, that baby cannot be aborted because it is a living baby with a heartbeat. So you can't abort it if it has a beating heart, because that's the sign of human life. And so you can't take its life if it's human life. Now, this has bothered a lot of far-left radical liberals, Hollywood elites, celebrities of all sorts are coming out against this bill. And we're going to look at the Yahoo News New Georgia Abortion Law Draws Hollywood Backlash article here, and we're going to make some comments about it. So let's jump right on into it. It says the television and film industry struck back this week at the state of Georgia, whose governor just signed one of the strictest abortion laws in the nation. But the reaction was slower and smaller than 2016, when a religious rights bill that would have allowed, quote, discrimination against LGBTQ persons provoked a boycott threat that led then Governor Nathan Deal to veto the measure. So you might remember that in 2016, the governor then backed down against the LGBTQ lobby and caved in. This time, not so much. 5 production companies announced Thursday that they would no longer work in the state. Okay, so they're putting some pressure on Georgia, which has attracted high-profile productions in the past decade with generous tax incentives. Blown Deadline Productions, run by David Simon, creator of The Wire and The Deuce. Killer Films, the production company behind First Reformed, Carol and Vox Lux. Duplass Brothers Productions, the Mark Duplass helmed company with a 4-film deal with Netflix. Color Force, Crazy Rich Asians, and The Hunger Games, and Counter Narrative Films, Netflix Triple Frontier, all said they would stop work in Georgia as long as the law stood. More than 100 actors, including major stars, have pledged to boycott productions in the state as well. Killer Films CEO Christine Voucher said that would no longer consider Georgia as a viable shooting location until this ridiculous law is overturned. Okay, but is the law ridiculous? No, it is not. It is a fetal heartbeat law. That means if you can detect the heartbeat of the baby, then it cannot be aborted. Makes perfect sense. If you have a heartbeat, you're a living human. If you have a heartbeat, you deserve rights. It makes perfect logical sense, but the members of the far left will not or refuse to make logical sense. They are so committed to the abortion cause that even if the baby has a heartbeat, even if there's a heartbeat detected, they don't care. They're wanting full authority to kill the baby in the womb at any point. They even want to be able to kill the baby after it's been born. After an abortion attempt fails, if the baby is born, they want to kill it after it's been born. They want the right to infanticide or baby murder, outright baby murder, and they won't stop until they get every single right that you can imagine related to childbirth and beyond. So it says here, Duplass added, "Don't give your business to Georgia. Will you pledge with me not to film anything in Georgia until they reverse this backwards legislation?" It's not backwards. It's basic human rights. And it's really hard to imagine anyone objecting to a law that says if the baby has a heartbeat, that's a clear sign that it is a living being and you can't take the life of the baby. I can't ask any female member of any film production that from which I am involved to so marginalize themselves and compromise their inalienable authority over their own bodies, wrote Simone in a series of Twitter messages. I must undertake production where the rights of all citizens remain intact. What about the baby? What about the rights of that innocent baby in the womb? What about its rights? What about its rights to life? Well, they just totally negate that. They don't count that. They don't even mention that. So they're talking about human rights. What about the baby's rights? No addressing that. Can only speak for production company. Our comparative assessments of locations for upcoming development will pull Georgia off the list until we can be assured the health options and civil liberties of our female colleagues are unimpaired. Nobody's talking about health options. We're talking about the baby's life in the womb. We're talking about basic human rights. We're not talking about keeping women healthy. Of course you want to keep women healthy. Keep all people healthy. No one is restricting health options. This is a matter of life and death. Do you have the right to kill a baby? Do you have a right to take a person's life, a person with a heartbeat? This baby is alive. It's a human life. It's no other kind of life, and it has a beating heart. So you don't get the right to kill another person just because you don't want to have a baby. That's a little bit late to be deciding whether you want to have a baby. If you don't want to have a baby, don't have sex, don't get pregnant, and don't have a beating heart in your womb. And then, if you don't have a baby in your womb, you can make all kinds of decisions. But once the baby is in the womb, you do not have total autonomous right over that human life. It's not you that is in there, it's the baby. The baby is a separate human being from you. So no one on this earth has the right to take the life of that innocent baby, especially now with technology where we can actually detect the heartbeat of that baby. Now, we've known it was a baby all along, but now we can actually detect the signs more and more that it is verifiably human life because only humans have heartbeats. You don't have, for example, if you have a little baby dog, it's not a human heartbeat. It's a dog heartbeat. And if you have a elephant, it's a elephant heartbeat. But if you have a human being with human DNA in the womb and you detect a heartbeat, it's a human heartbeat. So that's what the bill says. You cannot abort a baby when you can detect its heartbeat. Now, notice this is not a total absolute ban on abortion. It doesn't say you can't abort a baby before the heartbeat is detected. So it's not a total 100% pro-life solution, but it is a big, big way to restoring human rights to babies in the womb, because it eliminates the vast majority of abortions simply by making the test, does it have a human heartbeat and can we detect it? And if you can detect the human heartbeat, you cannot abort it. So that's all the bill says. Now, if you're a dyed-in-the-wool abortionist and you are pro-abortion, you want absolute 100% total autonomous freedom to kill that baby all the way up until birth and even after birth. So you're a fanatic and you cannot be convinced. But for most people, most decent people, the normal people of this society, I think the heartbeat bill has a chance of getting through to them, because the logic is really unassailable. If you can detect a heartbeat, you cannot abort it. Now, Governor Brian Kemp, it says, signed the heartbeat bill, which would criminalize all abortions after 6 weeks of gestation, before many women even know that they are pregnant, into the law this week. HB 481 classifies unborn children as distinct living persons. Isn't that what the biology says? If you have a heartbeat, you would be a human person, which would mean any woman who terminates a pregnancy would be subject to prosecution for murder, punishable by life imprisonment or death in Georgia. If a woman travels outside of Georgia for abortions, she could be charged with conspiracy to commit murder, a potential 10-year sentence. Now, that information is being given by pro-abortion people. The people behind this bill haven't talked about any kind of punishment for women. Okay, so that inserted into the article is there to try to scare people and saying, well, no, we could never do that. We could never punish any of these women. That's a whole separate issue that will have to be dealt with, but you don't go into laws against murder by bringing up, well, how are we going to punish it? That is a secondary consideration. So that's what the pro-abortion people want you to do. They want you to get scared. They want you to get nervous. They want you to figure out how are we going to enforce this and how are we going to punish this law? Those are secondary questions. Those are not primary questions. The primary question is that a human being, and is it morally right to kill a baby in the womb? Well, Georgia is saying that if you can detect the heartbeat of the baby in the womb, you have no right aborting that baby in the womb. And that makes really good sense, and there really isn't a very good argument against that logic. And so that's why people are so passionately against this law who are pro-abortion, because they know that the average person will look at the logic of the argument and say, well, yeah, if that has a heartbeat, if that baby's heartbeat can be detected, then we have to protect that baby. We can't abort that baby. And I think this is going to be something that possibly could tip the whole argument in favor of life as opposed to death. Now, the law would not go into effect until January 2020 and faces a court challenge for abortion rights advocates. A similar 6 weeks law in North Dakota was struck down by the courts in 2016. But anti-abortion activists have hoped that with Justice Brett Kavanaugh now in the Supreme Court, they have a chance to overturn Roe v. Wade. Alabama is also close to passing a statewide abortion law that would become the strictest in the nation. So here we have one of the motivations for having this heartbeat law, and that is pro-life Christians and others want a court case to appear before the Supreme Court. Now that Justice Brett Kavanaugh is on the Supreme Court, we have a chance, we stand a chance to be able to overturn Roe v. Wade. Because this law that was passed in Georgia is in direct violation with Roe v. Wade. And the people that pass this law know that it's in direct violation. So they are hoping that this will challenge Roe v. Wade at the Supreme Court level. And when it is challenged, Roe v. Wade will fall now that there are potentially 5 Supreme Court justices on the bench who can strike Roe v. Wade down. That's the hope. That's the possibility. And it's just a matter of time before one of these laws appears before the Supreme Court and the justices get to decide all over again whether Roe v. Wade will stand or fall. And we're all praying that it will fall. And these bills that are being passed are in direct defiance to Roe v. Wade. And the pro-abortion people know it, and that's why they're upset. Now, when the Georgia bill began to work its way through the Georgia legislature, actress Alyssa Milano spearheaded an initiative to pressure a boycott of the state. Milano told Yahoo News that she is contractually obligated to work in the state for 1 more month on the Netflix series Insatiable, but would cease working after that. Obviously, those who are already contractually obligated to be there should fight to get their show out of Georgia while continuing their contractual obligations, said Milano. I have to be there for another month, but you can be sure that I will fight tooth and nail to move Insatiable to a state that will protect our rights. And if it doesn't move to another state, I will not be able to return to the show if we are blessed with a 3rd season. This is my leverage. I will use it for the betterment of society and our great country. So that's really pretty bad. She's trying to fight for the right of women to kill their baby, and she says that's for the betterment of society. You know, under what universe, in what universe is it better for society for children to be killed in the wombs? It's better in no society. It's better in no universe. And she has gone so far as to even, in another article we didn't cover today, in another article she's actually calling on a strike by women in Georgia to not have sex until this legislation is overturned. You know, it's just to the point of desperation. These Hollywood actresses are at the point where they have nothing else to say. There is no argument that they can bring forth against the fetal heartbeat bill. And so they have to resort to every single kind of manipulative boycott, pressure, irrational methods that they can to try to get their way. Now, here are some of the other Hollywood actors involved in the boycott. Patricia Arquette, Brie Larson, that's so-called Captain Marvel, Natalie Portman, Oscar nominees Naomi Watts, Jessica Chastain, Laura Dern, Minnie Driver, Alec Baldwin, Dan Cheadle. The presence of Larson, Cheadle, Tessa Thompson, and Mark Ruffalo are among the signees is of note because they are all part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I guess I asked the question, in what universe is it okay for babies to be killed in the womb? I guess in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that's the only place I can think of in some make-believe universe. And the Marvel movies have their hub in Atlanta. And so a lot of actors and actresses go through Atlanta and they shoot these films in or around Atlanta. So they're trying to put pressure on Georgia to do away with this. And this is just one more tactic of the left to try to discourage basic human rights for babies. And we have to fight against these people who are fighting against human rights. Tax incentives for production were raised to 30% in 2008, and the film business has surged in the Peach State since, including popular productions like The Walking Dead, Stranger Things, and Avengers Endgame. The $800 million in tax credits handed out in the 2017 fiscal year are more than New York and California combined for what the governor's office said were 455 projects and nearly $3 billion in direct spending. So this is a big, big state for movies, and there's a lot of pressure now being put on Georgia to be pro-abortion. But again, the logic of these bills is that if you can detect a heartbeat is a sign of human life. And that's the way it is in any medical situation. When you have emergency medical teams trying to revive someone and there's still a heartbeat, usually indicates there's still hope. And so that's a great, great symbol for life and a human life. It goes on, it says, the industry was much more vocal in its opposition to the 2016 measure on the LGBTQ discrimination, with major players ranging from Netflix, Viacom, condemning the law. Disney and Marvel are inclusive companies, and although we have had great experiences filming in Georgia, we will plan to take our business elsewhere should any legislation allowing discriminatory practices be signed into state law, a spokesman for Disney said in March of 2016. Disney did not respond to a request for commenting regarding its stance on the new abortion law. So possibly some of these companies are not as radically, insanely committed to boycotting Georgia as some of these actresses and actors in Hollywood. But this new approach to fighting abortion, the fetal heartbeat, is really a great maneuver. It's a great technique. It's a great plan because it's so simple in the logic. And so we have to pray that it is a successful strategy. We have to pray that if it is challenged, and it will be, that it goes to the Supreme Court and that the Supreme Court takes the case and in the process of deciding this law actually does away with Roe v. Wade. And that's the big hope. That's our prayers are that one of these laws, and we don't know which state the law might be in. It could be in Georgia. It could be in Ohio. They have a similar law. It could be all over the place. Wherever these fetal heartbeat laws have been passed, we need to pray that they do, in fact, achieve what they were intended, and that is to either restrict abortion to almost zero in the state, or just simply be a case which the Supreme Court has to rule on. And either one of those options is a good, positive thing. Now, the worst case scenario would be that the Supreme Court does hear the case and that for some reason there is a conservative justice, so-called conservative justice, that votes to uphold Roe v. Wade. And so that would be a very unfortunate situation, especially because these conservative justices are there because people voted in conservative presidents, and the conservative presidents chose them because they are conservative justices. And the whole plan all along for the last 2-3 decades is we have to fight this in the courts because that's the way the courts have been the leading edge of the pro-death movement. They have been the ones that have caused, the justices have caused the trouble. Roe v. Wade is a Supreme Court decision, and which has caused so much trouble. So now we need to reverse the trouble that the Supreme Court caused in 73. We need to cause another revolution, this time overturning it and restoring back to the states the right to control this. Now, that would not end abortion across the board in the United States, but at least it would get it back to the states, and then the states could restrict or ban it totally. So that's our prayer. Hope this has helped, and we'll talk to you again another time on Christ and Culture. God bless.